Welcome to the Warrior in Progress podcast. This podcast features honest and vulnerable discussions about how to make lasting mindset shifts so you can commit to yourself, stop sabotaging yourself, so that you can transform your life. I'm your host, Jennifer McKee, certified health coach and motivational speaker. I've lost over 50% of my body weight naturally, 185 pounds, no surgery, quick fixes, diets, weight loss gimmicks, shakes, drugs, or deprivation. And I did all of that despite having a severe foot issue that limited the exercise I could do for the first part of my journey. I invite you to subscribe to the Warrior in Progress podcast for motivational, inspirational, and thought-provoking topics where I'm going to share with you some practical ideas and tools which will empower you and help you access that inner warrior inside of each and every one of us so you can become a better version of yourself and actually live your life instead of sitting on the sidelines just watching life pass you by. You can also go to McKee Health, McKeehealth.com, enter your name and your email to download my free Tame Your Inner Critic guide. And that guide's going to help you learn how to stop beating yourself up, how to stop sabotaging yourself so you can actually start believing in yourself again so you can reach your goals. Are you ready to get started? Welcome to another episode of the Warrior in Progress podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode. Today I'm going to be talking about how to stop self-sabotaging. Now, this is a big topic and I'm going to cover the topics in multiple episodes, but I want to start off by giving you some general ideas about this. This is probably the most common thing I hear from people. Jennifer, help. I'm sabotaging myself. I have these goals. I really want to achieve these goals. And I do well for a little bit of time. But then guess what? I self-sabotage. I completely relate to this. This was the story of my life. And I have to tell you, I still have to watch out for self-sabotage. I can still find myself slipping back into those old thinking patterns and those old habits. So let me share with you a few ideas and different things that I have learned throughout my journey, what I've learned from my journey, what I've learned from coaching other people, and just other books and things like that I've read on this topic. I find this topic so interesting because it doesn't make a lot of sense, when we want to achieve our goals and then all of a sudden we're self-sabotaging. So self-sabotage is actually very interesting to me because what I would find is that I would start making changes, right, to achieve my goals. And then something would happen. Usually I wasn't perfect or I made a mistake. And then I would beat myself up. The things I said to myself were worse than I would say, like worse things than I would say to my worst enemy, right? I'm so hard on myself. I would beat the hell out of myself in my head, right, with my words. And I would just throw in the towel and I would say, you know what, this is too hard. I guess I just can't do this. The way that I talk to myself, I would make myself feel less than. I would make myself feel not good enough. I would make myself feel like a failure, defective, and that there was no way that I could achieve my goals. Maybe I was just meant to be obese. Maybe I was just meant to be living a mediocre life in my comfort zone. And actually, I wasn't living my life, right? As we talked about in the previous episode, I was actually on the sidelines of my life. I was not living my life. I was watching life pass me by. So, what are the main things that cause self-sabotage? So the first thing, which I've already talked about in this podcast, and you're going to hear me talk about this many, many, many more times, all or nothing thinking, right? So all or nothing thinking, that's that black and white thinking, I have to be perfect. I have to be, doing X, Y, and Z. If I'm not doing X, Y, and Z perfectly every single day, then you know what? Screw this. I'm not good enough. And this is too hard. I can't do this. So with all or nothing thinking, the first step is to recognize it. The second step is to acknowledge and accept that you are a human being and you are going to make mistakes. Guess what? It's okay. Mistakes are a part of the journey. Now, I know you've heard me say that before. You're going to hear me say it again. Mistakes are a part of the journey. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a little bit of compassion and love. Treat yourself like you would a friend, a loved one who came to you and said, hey, I know I was supposed to eat like this today, or I know I was supposed to do this today, but guess what? I didn't do it. Would you tell that friend or loved one, okay, yep, you suck. You may as well just throw in the towel. You're just like not good enough. You're terrible. Like, why are you even trying? Because you can't do anything right. No, you would say, it's okay. You're going to do fine tomorrow. Just get back on track. I always say get back on track right now, right? Get back on track now. Not Monday, not after your vacation, not after a couple of months. Like, get back on track now, because the more we push that off, we can push it off even more and more and more, or we could do a lot of damage within that time that we push it off. So, first step is to recognize the all or nothing thinking. Second step is to give yourself a little bit of love and compassion and recognize that mistakes are a part of the journey, right? Mistakes are a part of the journey. That does not mean you're not good enough. That does not mean you're a failure. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to achieve your goals, right? If you think that people out there who achieve their goals don't make mistakes and they do everything perfectly, then unfortunately you're not seeing reality. So this is a reality check for you, okay? Think about people out there like the big leaders, Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, even people like Rachel Hollis. These people have made mistakes, but guess what? They learned from their mistakes and they kept moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other, following their heart and never giving up so that they could reach their goals. Sometimes we think we know how we're going to get to our goals. We think we know everything. And guess what? We don't. We totally don't. And it's okay that we don't know. We might not know how we're going to get somewhere, but we're going to try different things. We're going to learn from our mistakes and always commit to keep moving forward. Okay. So with self-sabotage, the all or nothing thinking is one of the biggest culprits that causes us to self-sabotage. The second thing that is another big culprit that causes us to self-sabotage is we're not keeping our promises to ourselves, and we're not staying in integrity with ourselves, and or the promises that we're setting are completely unattainable. So in the podcast episode I did about how to reach your goals when you don't trust or believe in yourself, I talked a lot about integrity with ourselves. And I talked a lot about promises and how to create attainable promises. So if you are not keeping your promises to yourself, so you're out of integrity and you're not clearing your integrity, because remember, it's normal to get out of integrity. None of us are perfect, right? But it's about clearing your integrity with somebody else and getting back on track ASAP. Not Monday, not a week from now, not after your vacation, doing it now. Or the promises that you're setting for yourself are unattainable. So that's another huge reason why we self-sabotage. And the third thing, it kind of goes hand in hand with that. When I was talking about setting unattainable promises, we can be setting promises that we're trying to keep, that cause deprivation. So if you're doing anything to deprive yourself, for example, telling yourself I have to eat 1,200 calories a day, or I only am going to eat 800 calories a day, or I'm never going to eat out again, or I'm never going to eat my favorite foods again. Good luck sticking to that on a long-term basis, right? It's not about deprivation. It's about learning healthy habits and creating a healthy lifestyle for yourself so that you can be healthy from the inside out, but also be able to participate in life and live your life and be able to go out and enjoy life with your family and your friends. And unfortunately, deprivation has no part in that. If we deprive ourselves, it can lead us to emotional eating, binge eating, and just going off of the rails. So remember, if you're listening to this and you've heard me talk before, you know what I would say about this. Small changes, first of all, so you don't feel overwhelmed, but figuring out how to create that balance. It's all about balance. It's about figuring out, how can I eat healthy? Some people say the 80-20 rule, where you're eating healthy 80% of the time and 20% of the time you're allowing yourself to splurge. I think that that's a good way to look at it. Now, when you first start out, let's say you're eating 90% unhealthy and 10% healthy. It might be hard for you to do 80% healthy, 20% unhealthy. You might actually have to start smaller than that, and that is fine. That's exactly what I did. I started off very small. Just to give an example, I was eating fast food probably 1 to 2 times a day, many times a week. And I did not start off by saying to myself, I can't eat fast food. Now, that's where I wanted to be, right? But I knew that that would be an unrealistic promise. I knew that that would be too overwhelming for me. So what did I do? I cut it back. I just said, okay, I'll eat out, 3 times a week, 4 times a week, whatever it was. I started with that. And then I gradually decreased it over time. So that's really the biggest advice I have there. So another thing with the self-sabotage, and I kind of already mentioned this when I was talking about all or nothing thinking, but I'm going to say it again because I want you to hear me. This is one of the most important things that I can share with you. Give yourself compassion and grace. This is not easy, okay? It's not easy to put yourself first. It's not easy to love yourself unconditionally, It's not easy to clear your integrity with somebody else when you're out of integrity. None of these things are easy. It's not easy to be nice to yourself, especially, if you're not used to being nice to yourself, right? So give yourself some compassion and grace. You're going to make mistakes. This is a learning process. It takes time. Have some patience with yourself. Have some compassion and grace. Okay, so one of the other things that causes self-sabotage is when we don't put ourselves first. This is the other thing I hear from every single person I've ever coached, which is, I don't know how to put myself first. I have a job and or a family and or a spouse and or XYZ, whatever. And all of these things, I have a responsibility, right? I have a responsibility to do certain things for these people or for this job or for whatever. And that has to come first, Jennifer. And when I hear people saying this, I actually had somebody tell me once that they didn't even have 5 minutes for themselves in a day. That's it, 5 minutes. They told me, I don't even have 5 minutes. Now, if you're telling yourself, I don't even have 5 minutes for myself, I hate to break the news to you, but you're lying. It's all about priorities. We all have the same amount of hours in every single day. So why is it that some people are successful, other people aren't with putting themselves first? Well, it has to do with priorities. Now, a lot of times we think, okay, putting myself first means I'm going to be spending 8 hours a day on myself, only on myself. And there's no way I can find that amount of time. No, that's not true. You do not have to spend 8 hours on yourself. So it's about figuring out, how can I start to make that transition, right? So right now, I am barely putting myself first. I'm taking care of my kids. I'm taking care of my job. I'm taking care of my spouse. I'm taking care of my parents. I'm taking care of my siblings, blah, 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 whatever it is. I'm taking care of all these things. How can I look at my responsibilities, right? And shift my priorities to give myself 30 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day or 5 minutes. If you have to start out with 5 minutes a day, like if you have to wake up 5 minutes earlier to give yourself that time, you are worth it and you deserve it. Start small, gradually increase that number of time that amount of time that you spend for yourself, okay? Let me tell you something. I had to learn this the hard way. We cannot fully give to other people. We cannot fully take care of our responsibilities to our full potential if we are not taking care of ourselves. How can you be the best mother, father, wife, husband, worker, coworker, if you're not putting yourself first. When I wasn't putting myself first, I built up a lot of resentment for myself and anger. I was angry at myself. And guess what? I took that out on people that I loved. And really, it had nothing to do with them and had everything to do with me. So when you start figuring out how to shift your priorities to give yourself some time for yourself, you're going to find that you feel much better about yourself, and that resentment that you have for yourself or that anger you have toward yourself is going to start to dissipate. Now, one thing too with, putting yourself first is boundaries. Now, I am going to have a separate podcast episode about boundaries only. But right now, I just want to talk about boundaries a little bit. So a boundary is where we are, like a healthy boundary. Let me clarify. A healthy boundary is where we are telling somebody else that this is what we have to do for ourselves, right? So let's say that, I'm just going to use this as an example. Let's say that our work wants us to work 80 hours a week and they don't pay us overtime. They don't pay it. We're salaried. They don't pay us for that extra 40 hours a week. So setting a boundary might be something like, I'm not able to work 80 hours a week. So we need to come up with a compromise here. And so then you work with your job to come up with a compromise. Now, let's say that in that particular situation, your work says, sorry, you're going to have to work 80 hours and you're not going to get paid for half of that time. Otherwise, we'll have to let you go. Now, that might be a difficult situation because you need the money to live. And I'm not telling anybody here to quit their job or anything like that. But in a situation like that where somebody is not able to honor the boundary that we're setting, then we have to ask ourselves, is this something that I can live with, right? Is this something I can live with? How is this going to impact me taking care of myself? How is this going to impact me taking care of the other people in my life that I care about? And this was one of the hardest things for me because I was a yes person. And believe me, I sometimes still am. I have to watch this. People pleaser, I said yes to everybody and everything. I would never stick up for myself. I would never set the boundaries that I needed to set for me. And that also caused me to build resentment and anger for myself, right? By saying yes to everyone else, I was actually saying no to myself. And if you do that like a million times like I did over a period of many, many years, you're going to build resentment and anger for yourself most likely because you are not being true to yourself. You are not putting yourself first. You're not taking care of your own needs. We are the only person who can truly take care of ourselves and our own needs. So I have to really look hard at situations now. When situations are presented to me, I have to really think about, I have to take some time. I can't just immediately say yes. I have to actually take some time and think about it and think about what would be healthy for me. And I have to tell you, this is still hard for me. This was not my normal way of thinking. It was not my automatic way of thinking. So thinking about myself first is still an ongoing process for me. So if you're a people pleaser and you say yes to everybody and everything but yourself, then I would really, really recommend you consider figuring out how to set some healthy boundaries for yourself. And again, I'm going to have a separate podcast episode on that. But the boundaries are so important because they help you put yourself first. Okay? So one of the other things that really causes us to self-sabotage is our inner critic. Okay? Our inner critic is that voice inside of us, that the negative voice that beats us up. I'm going to have a separate podcast episode about the inner critic because for those of you who know me, you know that this is one of my favorite topics and I could talk for a very long time on the inner critic, but I just want to introduce the inner critic in this episode. So, I just remember, I will never forget this. After I had lost 50 pounds, I was taking a picture of myself in the mirror for like a progress picture. And I was feeling really proud of myself because I had lost this weight naturally. I had put in a lot of work. I wasn't starving myself. I was, I wasn't perfect, but I was doing this in a healthy way. And I took the picture of myself and I looked at the picture. And my inner critic said, you may have lost 50 pounds, but you're still fat. And I did have over 100 pounds to lose, but at that moment I decided to start taking my power back from my inner critic. I said to myself, I may not be at the weight that I want to be, but I have been making healthy changes. I've been creating lifestyle changes, not just with nutrition and exercise, but with my mindset too. And you know what? I'm proud of that. And that's good enough for me. By me challenging my inner critic in that positive way, it shut my inner critic up. And I continued to practice that over time, over and over and over. And eventually the inner critic voice got quieter and quieter and quieter. And now it rarely comes out, and it's just amazing. So I definitely want to have a separate podcast episode where I talk about the inner critic. I talk about where it comes from and other things that you can do to work on that. Okay, so I just want you to remember, in regards to the inner critic, just because you get a thought doesn't make it true. If you believe all the thoughts in your head, if you believe the negative thoughts in your head, you're giving it power. If you judge yourself for the thoughts you get in your head, you're giving power to those thoughts. So it's not only about making a conscious choice not to put so much energy into the thoughts that you get, but also not judging yourself for the thoughts that you get. I get some crazy ass ideas in my head, okay? I get some crazy thoughts. And it's very easy for me to start judging myself. Like, I can't believe I got this thought, or why am I getting this thought? And then I just get like, it's almost like hamster wheel in the brain. And then I just get so obsessed and I start thinking about it so much and overanalyzing and overthinking. And guess what? That just keeps me stuck. So one thing I have really practiced is, and I'm still practicing this, I am not perfect, but just about observing my thoughts. Observing my thoughts. It's okay. I'm going to get some crazy thoughts. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm crazy. It doesn't mean something's wrong with me. I don't need to give those thoughts any power. I don't need to overthink them. I don't need to judge myself for getting them. I can simply observe my thoughts. What have you got to lose by believing something different? If you always do what you've always done, which is believe that negative voice in your head, you're going to stay exactly where you are, right? So what have you got to lose by believing that other voice in your head? We all have another voice in our head, and that's the voice that wants to get healthy. That's the voice that wants to live life. That's the voice that tells you you're an athlete, or that tells you can achieve your goal. It's the voice that tells you what your dreams and your goals are. Do you hear that voice? It's there. Now, when I first started, that voice was there, but it was so faint. I seriously could barely hear it. I had to really pay attention and listen to it more. But the more I stopped giving power to my inner critic thoughts, the louder that other voice in my head got. Telling me that I could do anything that I put my mind to, that told me I was a warrior. Listen to that voice, work on challenging those thoughts, trusting the process, having patience, okay? So I want to give you a call to action, something that you can work on with self-sabotage. So the first thing I want you to work on is in regards to the inner critic. And now, again, we are going to be talking more about the inner critic in future episodes, but right now, I want you to work on noticing that negative voice in your head, that limiting voice that's holding you back, that's making you feel like crap. If you have a voice in your head that's making you feel less than, if it's making you feel like you're a failure, not good enough, defective, that is your inner critic. If it is holding you back from taking actions in your life, that is not good. So what can you do? I want you to remember that just because you have a thought doesn't make it true. I want you to challenge those thoughts. I want you to listen to that positive voice in your head, the voice that's telling you what your dreams are. Maybe your dream is to run a 5K. Maybe your dream is to walk a 5K. Maybe you have a dream of skydiving or fitting in a like roller coaster seat, or fitting in an airplane seat, or maybe you want to zip line, whatever it is. Like, what are your dreams? That voice that's telling you what your dreams are, I want you to give that voice the power. And I want you to also work on setting attainable goals, or promises, as we call it. Attainable goals and promises. So I want you to write down 1 to 3 attainable goals or promises that you can work on this week only. The idea is to make them small so that they are not overwhelming, and then build on them over time. Those goals or promises are healthy habits, and the more that you work on them, they will become habit and things that you will be doing the rest of your life. And that's how you create your healthy lifestyle. Because look, I don't talk about weight loss. I talk about how to lose the weight and keep it off. And I don't only talk about that. I talk about how to love yourself and take your power back from the ways that we can limit ourselves through our mind. So those are the things that I'm talking about, and those are the things that I am trying to help you with. And believe me, when you work on your mindset and you improve that, you're going to see that this impacts all areas of your life. So if you don't have any weight to lose, right? If maybe you just notice like you're staying in your comfort zone with work or with relationships, or maybe you're not taking a risk on relationships, or like whatever it is, the mindset work is going to help you in all areas of your life, right? Okay, so remember, trust the process. Have patience with yourself. You're learning something new. You're trying to change the way that you think. This is going to take time. Okay, so that's the call to action. Challenge the thoughts and write down 1 to 3 attainable goals or promises that you can work on this week. And I want you to keep track of those. I want you to keep track. It's not like we write down our goals and on a piece of paper and we shove it in a desk. It's like if we do that, then it's like, how are we going to be able to achieve those things? We have to be very intentional. I recommend reading what your goals are, tracking your progress every day, reminding yourself, what do I need to do to make sure I can achieve these goals today, one day at a time. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Just remember, what you've been through, what you're going through, you're not alone. I relate to you, and so many people out there relate to you. So keep coming back and listening to this podcast, and I really, really hope that you continue to learn ideas and tools that will help you achieve your goals. I'm sending you lots and lots of love. If you enjoyed this episode of the Warrior in Progress podcast, then please share it with your friends, share it with everybody. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast as well so you can get notifications on when I release new episodes. Meanwhile, you can follow me on social media. On Facebook, my handle is fullycommitted13, and on Instagram, my handle is fully_committed13. You can find out more about my work at McKeeHealth.com. That's McKeeHealth.com. And make sure to download my free Tame Your Inner Critic guide at McKeeHealth.com, and you can learn how to stop beating yourself up, how to stop sabotaging yourself so that you can achieve your goals. Remember, you're a warrior in progress, and you can do anything you set your mind to.